Hello there and welcome. The world outside can be busy and loud, but here things slow down. This is a quiet place where curious minds can drift off to sleep or simply learn a thing or two while relaxing. Tonight we are not just looking at forests, caves and oceans. We are stepping into them to discover some of nature's most magical secrets. We will uncover wonders that most people never see. A flower that blooms only once in a lifetime. Stones that seem to walk on their own. Storms that have raged for centuries. And trees older than entire civilizations. We will travel gently, fact by fact, through deserts that burst into sudden bloom, rivers that run beneath the sea, and the quiet, impossible ways life survives in every corner of Earth. Some of what you hear tonight may surprise you. Some may stay with you, like the smell of rain after a summer storm. And just before we begin, if these calm, curious explorations help you unwind or give you a quiet way to end your day, consider liking and subscribing or simply sharing your thoughts down in the comments. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. Now, if you are ready, let us begin our journey through 100 quiet truths about the natural world. Each one a small window into the beauty and strangeness that surrounds us, even when we are not looking. Each one a reminder that Earth holds more mystery than we could explore in 100 lifetimes. Fact 1. A single teaspoon of soil can contain more life than there are people on Earth. Beneath your feet is a world you rarely see. In just 1 teaspoon of healthy soil, there can be billions of tiny living things. Bacteria so small you would need a microscope to see even one of them. Fungi that spread like underground threads connecting everything below the surface. Creatures called protozoa that drift through water droplets between soil particles. And countless other beings like nematodes and mites, each one going about its life in the darkness below the ground. This living network breaks down fallen leaves that drop from trees in autumn, recycles nutrients that plants need to grow strong, and even communicates with plants through chemical signals sent between roots and fungal threads. Many of these organisms are too small to imagine clearly, smaller than the width of a human hair, yet they work together in ways that scientists are only beginning to understand. Without them, plants would struggle to find food and the chain of life above the soil would collapse. Scientists are still discovering new species in soil samples every year, life forms that have never been named or studied, creatures that have lived beneath our feet for millions of years without anyone knowing they existed. It is humbling to think that under the sole of your shoe lies a busy city of life so vast it is larger than the entire human population, quietly working to keep our world alive and growing. Fact 2. Certain plants can move fast enough to catch prey. Most plants move too slowly for us to notice, growing and bending over days or weeks as they reach towards sunlight. But some species move with surprising speed, fast enough to trap an insect that does not expect it. The Venus flytrap, for instance, can snap its leaves shut in less than a second, when tiny hairs inside the trap are touched twice in quick succession. The plant counts the touches to make sure it is not wasting energy on a falling raindrop, or a piece of dust drifting by on the wind. It waits for that second touch, confirming that something alive is walking across its surface, and then it closes, like a mouth with teeth made of interlocking leaf edges. Some plants called sundews curl their sticky leaves inward while the waterwheel plant spins its traps underwater, catching tiny water creatures in a motion so quick it is hard to see with the naked eye. These movements happen thanks to changes in water pressure inside the plant cells, triggered by touch. Water rushes from one part of the leaf to another, causing it to bend or snap shut. To the insect, it is over in an instant. One moment it is exploring what looks like a safe surface. The next it is caught in a prison that will slowly digest it over the coming days. These plants live in places where the soil is poor in nutrients, so catching and digesting prey gives them the nitrogen they need to survive. Watching one in action feels almost unsettling, as if the plant has made a decision, as if it is thinking and planning in ways we do not usually associate with the green growing things around us. Fact 3. Some trees can live for thousands of years. In the quiet corners of the world, there are trees so old that entire civilizations have risen and fallen in their lifetime. The bristlecone pines of the American West are among the most ancient, with some individuals exceeding 4,000 years of age. They grow slowly in harsh mountain environments, twisting into sculpted forms under wind and snow. Their bark becomes weathered and worn. stripped away on one side while still living on the other, adapting to survive in conditions that would kill younger trees. Inside the tree's core lies a living record of every year that has passed. Wet years and dry years, storms and seasons of peace, volcanic eruptions that darkened the sky, and years of perfect growing conditions. Scientists can read these rings like songs in a history book, learning about climates that existed long before humans kept written records. These trees have survived without being uprooted simply by adapting, letting parts of themselves die back in harsh years when water is scarce, then growing again when conditions improve. When you stand near one, you're in the presence of something that began life before the pyramids were built, before many of the languages we speak today even existed, and it is still quietly making new leaves, one spring after another, as if time means nothing at all. Fact 4. Certain fungi can control the minds of insects. In the undergrowth of tropical forests, a strange drama unfolds that seems borrowed from science fiction. The Ophiocordyceps fungus infects ants and other insects, spreading through their bodies like an invisible invasion. Once inside, it releases chemicals that alter the insect's behavior in specific and terrifying ways, compelling it to leave its colony and climb to a high-exposed perch where conditions are perfect for the fungus to grow. The infected ant no longer acts like itself. It walks away from everything it knows, climbs higher than it would normally go, and clamps its jaws onto a leaf or branch in a death grip. There, the fungus kills its host, growing a stalk from its body that rises into the air like a dark finger. From the tip of this stalk, spores are released into the breeze, floating down to infect others below. This is not random. The height and position are calculated by millions of years of evolution to spread spores as far as possible. To us, it seems almost like science fiction. A parasite hijacking its host's nervous system to turn it into a vehicle for its own reproduction. Yet it is a natural part of the rainforest's complex web of life, both unsettling and fascinating in its precision. The fungus does not waste energy. It does not grow where it should not. It knows exactly what it needs to do, written into its biology like instructions in a manual no one can read. Fact 5. There are places where it rains fish. In a small town in Honduras called Yoro, residents have a name for a rare but remarkable event. They call it Lluvia de Peces, the rain of fish. Several times a year, usually after intense thunderstorms that shake the ground and fill the sky with lightning, people find small fish flopping in the streets and fields, struggling to breathe in the open air. Children run out to collect them in buckets while adults stand amazed at what has fallen from the clouds. Scientists think powerful winds or waterspouts, which are like tornadoes that form over water, may lift fish from nearby rivers or the sea and carry them inland before dropping them with the rain. Some locals see it as a miracle sent from above, while others treat it as a natural oddity, something strange but not impossible. Similar reports have appeared in other parts of the world involving frogs that rain down in their thousands, crabs scattered across parking lots after storms, and even jellyfish found miles inland after particularly violent weather. To witness it must feel surreal, to hear the rainfall and then see it glittering with the movement of living creatures tumbling from the sky, gasping and wriggling as they hit the ground. It reminds us that nature can surprise us in ways we never expect, turning the sky into a delivery system for life itself. Fact 6. Some animals can survive being frozen solid. In the far north, where winter lasts for months and temperatures drop to levels that would kill most living things, certain creatures can pause their lives in the most extreme way imaginable. They freeze. The wood frog of Alaska, for example, can let up to 2/3 of its body water turn to ice during winter. Its heart stops beating, its blood stops flowing, its breathing ceases completely, and yet it is not dead. Special compounds in its body like glucose and urea act as natural antifreeze, preventing its cells from bursting as ice crystals form. The frog essentially becomes a frozen statue, waiting beneath leaves and snow for winter to pass. When spring returns and the temperature rises, the frog thaws out slowly. Its heart begins to beat again. Blood starts flowing through its veins. And it hops away as if nothing happened, ready to find food and mates as if it had simply been sleeping. Some insects, Befusher, and even tiny microscopic creatures called tardigrades use similar strategies to survive. It is a survival method that seems impossible, like something from a fantasy story. Yet nature has refined it over millions of years, allowing life to persist in places where winter is more like a months-long deep freeze that would kill anything unprepared. Fact 7. Lightning strikes Earth millions of times every day. Across the globe at this very moment, lightning is flashing somewhere. Scientists estimate that roughly 8 million strikes occur each day, more than 90 times per second if you could count them all. These bolts form when electrical charges build up inside clouds or between clouds and the ground, creating a difference in voltage so strong that the air itself cannot hold it back any longer. The electricity finds a path and surges downward in a fraction of a second. The air around a bolt heats to over 30,000 degrees in an instant, hotter than the surface of the sun. That sudden heat makes the air expand explosively, creating the sound we know as thunder. Lightning does not just light up the sky for our entertainment. It also plays a role in our planet's chemistry, helping form compounds like nitrogen oxides that fall to the ground with rain and provide nutrients that plants need to grow. In the tropics where storms are frequent, the night horizon often flickers with distant flashes, a silent reminder that the atmosphere is constantly alive with energy, constantly moving and changing and reshaping itself. Fact 8. Some fish can walk on land. In tidal zones and swampy areas where water levels change throughout the day, certain fish have learned to move beyond the water's edge. The mud skipper found in parts of Asia and Africa uses its strong front fins like arms to pull itself across mudflats, searching for food and avoiding predators that hunt in the water. It can breathe through its skin and the lining of its mouth and throat as long as it stays moist, carrying a small supply of water in its gill chambers like a person holding their breath. Other fish, like the climbing perch, can survive out of water for days and even move between ponds during rainy seasons, travelling across land to find new homes. These unusual adaptations allow them to exploit environments where purely water-dwelling fish cannot survive. Watching a fish pull itself along the ground feels almost like seeing evolution in action, a glimpse of the ancient past when life was first testing the edges of land, first learning to breathe air and survive outside the ocean that gave birth to all life on Earth. Fact 9. The Amazon rainforest makes its own rain. The Amazon is so vast and dense that it creates its own weather patterns. Each day, the forest releases billions of litres of water vapour into the air through a process called transpiration, where water evaporates from the surfaces of leaves. This moisture rises like invisible steam, cools as it climbs higher into the atmosphere, and condenses into clouds that hang over the forest like a blanket. Later, these clouds release their water back as rain, feeding the forest that produced it in an endless cycle. This process helps the Amazon stay green and lush even during drier months when other regions might turn brown and dusty. It also influences weather far beyond South America, affecting rainfall patterns thousands of kilometers away in places that seem completely disconnected from the rainforest. The sheer scale is hard to imagine. From above, when you look down from an airplane or satellite, the rainforest appears to breathe out great plumes of moisture, shaping its own climate and acting like a giant heart pumping water into the atmosphere. Without the forest, the rain would change, and without the rain, the forest would shrink. They depend on each other in a relationship that has lasted for millions of years. Fact 10. There are rivers that flow under the ocean. Beneath the waves where sunlight fades into darkness, rivers can still flow. These underwater rivers are not made of fresh water like the streams you might find in a forest. Instead, they are made of dense, salty water or sediment-laden currents that travel along the seafloor like liquid conveyor belts. One example is found in the Black Sea, where a powerful current snakes for over 100 kilometers beneath the surface, carving channels and carrying nutrients from one part of the ocean to another. These rivers occur where bodies of water with different salt levels meet, creating a boundary where the heavier, saltier water sinks and flows separately from the lighter water above it. Divers who have explored them describe an eerie sensation. Swimming through one river while another flows above or below them, the layers visibly distinct in the dim underwater light. You can see the boundary between them, a shimmering line where two different densities meet. It feels like discovering a secret pathway through the ocean, a hidden road that marine life might follow on long journeys we know nothing about. Fact 11. Some deserts bloom with flowers overnight. Deserts can seem lifeless for most of the year, vast expanses of sand and rock baking under an unforgiving sun, but their soils often hide seeds lying dormant, waiting patiently for years or even decades for the right moment. After a rare soaking rain, When water finally penetrates the dry ground, these seeds can germinate almost immediately. Within hours to days, the barren ground transforms into a carpet of colour as thousands of plants bloom at once. Yellows and purples and reds spread across the landscape like someone has painted it overnight. The spectacle can last only a short time, perhaps a few weeks, before the heat returns and dries the flowers, scattering seeds for the next cycle which might not come for another 5 or 10 years. In places like the Atacama Desert in Chile, one of the driest places on Earth, these super blooms can be seen from space when satellites pass overhead. An explosion of life against one of the harshest landscapes on the planet is nature's reminder that even in the most unlikely places, beauty and abundance can appear in an instant when conditions align, proving that patience and timing can create miracles. Fact 12. There are lakes that never freeze even in the coldest winters. Some lakes defy the seasons in ways that seem impossible. In frigid regions where temperatures plunge far below zero, most water surfaces lock into thick ice that can support the weight of vehicles, but a few lakes stay liquid all year, their surfaces rippling with waves even when everything around them is frozen solid. This can happen for several reasons, each one a testament to Earth's hidden warmth. Some are fed by warm underground springs that keep the water above freezing, no matter how cold the air becomes. Others are extremely deep with temperatures in the depths that help regulate the surface, preventing it from cooling enough to freeze. In volcanic areas, geothermal heat seeps upward from magma chambers miles below, creating pockets of open water even when the surrounding landscape is buried under snow. These lakes become crucial havens for wildlife in winter, drawing birds and mammals from great distances to drink and feed when other water sources have turned to ice. In the stark quiet of a snowy plain, the sight of open, rippling water feels almost magical, a reminder that warmth can hide in unexpected places, sustaining life against the odds. Fact 13. Coral reefs are built by tiny animals. When you picture a coral reef in your mind, you might think of colourful rock-like structures teeming with fish, a underwater garden of strange shapes and brilliant hues. But the reef itself is not rock at all. It is alive, built slowly over centuries by countless tiny animals called coral polyps. Each polyp is no bigger than a grain of rice, a soft-bodied creature related to jellyfish and sea anemones. Each polyp secretes a hard skeleton of calcium carbonate, the same material found in seashells and limestone. Over time, as generations of polyps live and die, these skeletons pile up into massive structures. New generations of polyps live on top of the old, creating a living city in the sea where thousands of species find food and shelter. Coral reefs provide nurseries for many fish, places where young ones can hide from predators while they grow. Though delicate and vulnerable to changes in water temperature and quality, they can stretch for hundreds of kilometres, like the Great Barrier Reef in Australia, which is so large it can be seen from space. From above, they look like vivid patches of blue and green in the water. But up close, each ridge and curve is the work of animals no bigger than your fingernail, slowly shaping the ocean floor one tiny layer at a time. Fact 14. Some birds can fly for months without landing. The common swift is one of nature's most tireless travellers, a bird that seems to belong more to the sky than to the ground. Once it leaves the nest as a young bird, it may spend months or even years in the air without touching down, eating insects it catches in flight, sleeping in brief bursts while gliding, and even mating on the wing high above the earth. Scientists have tracked swifts migrating thousands of kilometres, looping between continents and riding air currents to conserve energy. They can sleep by shutting down one half of their brain at a time, a process that allows them to rest while the other half keeps them flying in the right direction. This means they are never fully asleep and never fully awake, existing in a state between the two as they travel. Other species, like certain albatrosses, also cover vast distances over open ocean without landing, using wind patterns and the rising air above waves to stay aloft with barely a wing beat. To imagine living in the sky for so long is to see life from a completely different perspective, one where the land is just a distant idea seen far below, and the horizon is the only constant companion. Fact 15. The air in forests can act like a natural medicine. Walk into a forest, breathe deeply, and you might feel an almost instant sense of calm washing over you. Part of this comes from chemicals released by trees called phytoncides, compounds that trees produce to protect themselves from pests and disease. When we inhale them, they can lower stress hormones in our bodies and even boost the function of our immune systems, helping us fight off illness. In Japan, this practice of spending mindful time in forests has a name. They call it Shinrin Yoku or forest bathing, and it is considered a form of preventive medicine. The effect is not just in your mind. Studies have shown measurable health benefits after time spent among trees, including lower blood pressure, improved mood, and better concentration. It is as if the forest shares a small part of its resilience with us, a quiet exchange between two living beings carried on the air itself. The trees give us something without asking for anything in return, offering healing simply by being what they are. Fact 16. Volcanoes can create new islands. When an undersea volcano erupts deep beneath the ocean's surface, molten rock can build up slowly or explosively until it rises above the water, forming brand new land where there was only ocean before. These volcanic islands may begin as barren, steaming rock, hostile to almost all life, with temperatures so high that nothing can survive. But over time, winds and ocean currents bring seeds from distant shores, birds arrive and leave droppings that contain more seeds, and marine life begins to colonize the shallow waters around the new land. Some islands vanish again as waves erode them faster than the volcano can build them up, disappearing back beneath the surface as if they were never there. Others grow into permanent homes for plants, animals, and even people, becoming part of the permanent geography of the world. In 1963, an eruption off the coast of Iceland created the island of Surtsey, which became a living laboratory for scientists studying how ecosystems begin from scratch, how life colonizes bare rock and turns it into soil and forest over decades. To watch a whole island appear where there was once only ocean is to see Earth reshaping itself in real time, adding new pages to its ever-changing story. Fact 17. Some animals can regrow entire limbs. If a salamander loses a leg to a predator or an accident, something remarkable happens. Instead of living with the injury for the rest of its life, the salamander can grow a new one, complete with bones, muscles, nerves, skin, and all the tiny details that make a limb functional. Certain species can even regenerate parts of their heart, eyes, or spinal cord, abilities that seem almost magical to those of us who cannot do the same. Starfish can regrow lost arms, and if the central body remains intact, some species can regenerate an entirely new starfish from a single severed limb, essentially cloning themselves through injury. This remarkable ability comes from specialized cells that can turn into any type of tissue needed, rebuilding whatever was lost piece by piece. Humans share some of the same genetic pathways that control regeneration, but ours are far less active, turned off or suppressed in ways scientists do not fully understand. Researchers study these animals in hopes of unlocking ways to heal severe injuries in people, perhaps one day allowing us to regrow damaged organs or limbs. In nature, regeneration is more than a trick or a curiosity. It is a survival strategy, allowing creatures to escape predators and recover fully from damage that would be permanent and disabling for most life. Fact 18. Glaciers can move like rivers of ice. Though they seem frozen in place, permanent and unchanging like mountains, glaciers are constantly on the move. Gravity pulls them down a hill, and over months and years, the ice flows like an incredibly slow river, bending around obstacles and carving valleys as it goes. The speed can be just a few centimeters a day in some places, while in others, during rare surges, a glacier might move several meters in a single day, creaking and groaning as it slides forward. As glaciers move, they grind rock into fine powder called glacial flour, which colors rivers downstream in shades of milky blue and grey. They carve deep U-shaped valleys, leaving behind landscapes that look like they were sculpted by giants. When they retreat during warmer periods, they leave behind lakes caught in depressions, ridges of gravel and stone called moraines, and fertile soil that eventually becomes home to forests. Watching a glacier move in real time is nearly impossible without special equipment that can measure tiny shifts over days. But satellite images and time-lapse photography reveal their steady, relentless motion. A reminder that even the most solid-looking things on Earth are not truly still. Everything moves, everything changes, given enough time. Fact 19. There are caves filled with giant crystals. In northern Mexico lies the Cave of the Crystals, a hidden chamber discovered in the year 2000 beneath a working mine. Inside are some of the largest natural crystals ever found. Selenite columns as long as 15 meters, gleaming like frozen lightning in the dim light. The cave's extreme heat and humidity, often exceeding 45 degrees Celsius, make it dangerous to enter without special cooling suits and breathing equipment. But those who have ventured inside describe it as stepping into a world out of a dream, where the walls themselves seem alive with light. These crystals grew over hundreds of thousands of years in mineral-rich water, kept at a constant temperature by geothermal heat from below. As long as the water remained still and conditions stayed stable, the crystals continued to grow slowly, atom by atom, building themselves into the massive structures that fill the cave today. It is anotherworldly, a reminder of the slow artistry of geology, of the patient work that happens in darkness where no human eye can see, creating beauty that may never be witnessed for thousands of years. Factor 20. Some plants communicate through underground networks. Beneath the forest floor where you cannot see, fungi form vast networks of thin threads called mycelium. These threads connect the roots of different plants, linking trees and shrubs and flowers into a kind of living internet. Through this wood wide web, as scientists sometimes call it, plants can share nutrients with each other, send chemical signals about their health, and even warn to neighbours about pests and diseases. A tree under attack by insects might release signals through the network that prompt its neighbours to produce protective compounds in their leaves, making themselves less appealing before the pests even arrive. Or an older tree with deep roots that reach water might send sugars to a shaded sapling struggling to get enough sunlight, helping the younger generation survive. This cooperation blurs the lines between individual and community, revealing a hidden layer of intelligence in ecosystems that we are only beginning to understand. What looks like a quiet forest from above is, below the surface, buzzing with silent conversation, with plants helping each other in ways that challenge our idea of them as passive and solitary beings. Fact 21. There are forests growing on floating islands. In certain lakes and wetlands, mats of soil, roots, and vegetation sometimes break free from the shore and drift across the water like natural boats. Over time, grasses and shrubs take hold in the floating soil, and even trees can grow, their roots tangling through the mass and holding it together. Some islands are small enough to drift with the wind, changing position from day to day. Others anchor temporarily in shallow water before breaking loose again when water levels change. These floating forests provide shelter for nesting birds and insects, and the water beneath them becomes home to fish seeking shade and protection. In some parts of the world, they are woven into local folklore, places that seem to appear and vanish with the seasons, moving across lakes like ghost islands. They are a reminder that even something as grounded as a forest can learn to wander, adapting to conditions that most trees could never survive. Fact 22. Certain butterflies can see colours humans cannot. Our eyes detect three primary colours of light: red, green, and blue. These three colours combine into all the shades we can see, creating the rainbow and the sunset, and every colour in between. But some butterflies have far more complex eyes with additional types of light-sensitive cells that detect ultraviolet light, wavelengths that are invisible to us. This lets them see patterns on flowers and even on other butterflies that we cannot perceive no matter how closely we look. These hidden patterns guide them straight to nectar, like runway lights on a landing strip, showing them exactly where to land. On other butterflies, ultraviolet markings can signal health, readiness to mate, or warnings to stay away. We cannot imagine exactly what their world looks like. Scientists believe it would be like adding entirely new colours to the rainbow, hues we have no names for because we have never seen them. Patterns that appear and vanish with the changing light. A constant glow to flowers that seem ordinary to our eyes. Their world is richer than ours in ways we can only guess at. Fact 23. Mermaid animals can change their sex to survive. In the underwater world, social balance often determines who can reproduce and who cannot. Clownfish, for example, live in small groups among sea anemones with one dominant female who controls the group. If she dies, the largest male in the group transforms into a female over a period of weeks, taking her place and ensuring the group can continue to reproduce. His body undergoes sweeping hormonal changes, remodeling reproductive organs, and sometimes even changing in colour or size. Certain wrasses and parrotfish switch in the opposite direction, changing from female to male when the group hierarchy demands it, when the dominant male is lost and a new one is needed. These shifts are not temporary disguises or tricks. They are permanent transformations at a biological level. This adaptation means that no matter what happens to the group's structure, reproduction can continue. To us, it may seem extraordinary or even impossible. But in these ecosystems, it is simply a practical strategy honed over millions of years that keeps life moving forward when circumstances change suddenly. Fact 24. The tallest waves in the ocean can form without storms. Most people imagine towering waves whipped up by violent weather, hurricanes driving water into mountains that crash against ships. But some of the ocean's tallest walls of water appear on calm days when the sea seems peaceful. These are known as rogue waves, and they form when multiple smaller waves align perfectly, combining their energies into a single massive crest through a process called constructive interference. This can create waves twice as tall as those around them, sometimes over 30 meters high, as tall as a 10-story building. Once considered sailors' legends and dismissed as exaggerations, rogue waves have now been confirmed by satellite data and ocean sensors placed in deep water. They can rise from an otherwise unremarkable sea in minutes, then vanish just as quickly, leaving no trace. Ships caught in their path often have no warning. Seeing one from the deck, a sudden wall of water blocking the horizon and rising higher than your mast would feel like the ocean itself had decided to stand up, reminding us how unpredictable and powerful it can be even in moments of apparent calm. Fact 25. There are flowers that bloom only once every few decades. Some plants invest years, even entire decades, in preparing for a single flowering event. The agave, for example, can take 30 years or more to bloom, growing slowly and storing energy year after year. Then, when the time is right, it sends up a towering stalk covered in hundreds of blossoms before dying soon after, leaving behind seeds for the next generation. In the Himalayas, the rare Himalayan lily waits years for just the right conditions of temperature, sunlight, and soil moisture before unfolding its delicate blooms. When these plants finally flower, they often attract swarms of pollinators, overwhelming them with abundance to ensure maximum seed spread across the landscape. It is a high-stakes gamble, years of patience and energy investment for one brief chance at reproduction. If the moment passes without success, if pollinators do not come, or if the weather turns bad at the wrong time, the plant's long investment is lost and it dies without leaving offspring. But when it works, when everything aligns perfectly, the landscape transforms as if the earth has been saving up beauty for a single fleeting display, a burst of colour and life that justifies decades of waiting. Fact 26. Some lakes change colour depending on the season. In certain places around the world, the same body of water can shift through a palette of colours that seem impossible. Deep blue one season, vivid green the next, sometimes even pink or red like something from a painting. These changes usually come from seasonal blooms of algae that multiply rapidly when conditions are right, shifts in mineral concentrations washed down from surrounding hills, or the way sunlight scatters through the water at different angles as the sun's path changes throughout the year. In Canada, there is a place called Spotted Lake where mineral-rich pools turn shades of yellow, green and blue in summer as the water evaporates and leaves behind concentrated minerals. In Australia, Lake Hillier glows with a bubblegum pink hue year-round thanks to microorganisms that thrive in its salty water. But in some lakes, similar changes are temporary and tied to seasonal cycles of temperature and rainfall. Standing at the shore during one of these transformations, it can seem as if the lake has been dyed overnight by invisible hands. But it is all the work of nature's chemistry, tiny organisms and dissolved minerals creating beauty without any human involvement. A reminder that landscapes can transform dramatically in ways we might never predict. Fact 27. Certain animals never stop growing. While most species have a fixed adult size that they reach and then maintain for the rest of their lives, some creatures keep growing throughout their entire existence. This trait is called indeterminate growth. Many fish, reptiles, and amphibians grow larger each year as long as they have enough food and manage to avoid injury or disease. Giant catfish in Southeast Asia, for example, can reach over 2 meters in length, becoming larger than most adult humans. Saltwater crocodiles can grow for decades, eventually becoming massive predators that dominate their rivers and coastlines. This slow, steady growth means the largest individuals are also the oldest, but often carrying decades of survival knowledge in their minds. They know where to find food during different seasons, when to avoid danger, and how to navigate their territory. Their presence can shape the entire ecosystem around them because other animals learn to fear and respect these ancient giants. In a way, they are the elders of their species, living libraries of experience that younger animals can learn from simply by watching how they behave. Fact 28. Earth's magnetic field helps animals find their way. Invisible to human senses, Earth's magnetic field wraps around the planet like a protective shell. But many animals can detect it and use it as a navigation tool that never fails. Sea turtles use it to cross vast oceans and return decades later to the exact beach where they hatched, a journey that would be impossible without this invisible map. Birds navigate thousands of kilometers between breeding grounds and wintering areas, adjusting their routes as magnetic lines shift slightly over time due to changes in the molten iron core deep beneath our feet. Even tiny animals like certain bacteria align themselves with magnetic fields to find optimal environments in pond sediment. Scientists believe this sense may come from microscopic magnetic crystals inside their bodies, tiny compasses made of iron that respond to Earth's field. Or it might come from specialized proteins in their eyes that react to magnetic forces in ways we still do not fully understand. Whatever the mechanism, it is a reminder that animals experience layers of the world we cannot directly perceive, sensing forces that shape every journey they take across land, sea, and sky. Fact 29. There are trees that can walk to find sunlight. Deep in Central and South American rainforests, a tree called the walking palm has developed a unique way of adjusting to changing light conditions. It grows multiple stilt-like roots that can sprout in new directions, spreading out from the trunk like the legs of a giant spider. If part of the tree becomes shaded by other plants growing nearby, it sends out roots toward brighter spots where more sunlight reaches the forest floor, allowing it to shift its trunk slowly over time, sometimes several centimeters a year. Over decades, older roots on the shaded side die back and decompose, leaving the tree standing in a slightly new position. While it does not walk in the way animals do, picking up its roots and moving quickly, this adaptation helps it survive in dense forests where sunlight shifts constantly as other plants grow and die around it. It is a slow-motion migration, an almost imperceptible journey toward the light that unfolds over years and decades, invisible unless you mark the tree's position and return much later to find it has moved. Fact 30. Some plants can store water for years. In arid landscapes where rainfall is rare and unpredictable, arriving in short violent bursts separated by months or years of drought, certain plants have evolved to store vast amounts of water inside their tissues. The baobab tree, native to parts of Africa, can hold thousands of litres within its swollen trunk, which expands during rainy seasons and slowly shrinks during dry years. This stored water sustains the tree and also provides hydration for animals and people who tap into it during years-long droughts, when other water sources have completely dried up. Desert succulents store water in thick leaves and stems, sealing it away behind waxy coatings that prevent evaporation even in intense heat. These natural reservoirs act as lifelines for entire ecosystems, providing moisture when everything else is bone dry. In many cases, the water stored in these plants is the difference between survival and collapse for the creatures sharing their environment. Birds nest in baobab hollows, insects drink from cuts in succulent stems, and mammals learn which plants can save them when thirst becomes desperate. Fact 31. There are glowing bays where the water lights up at night. In a few rare coastal spots around the world, the sea comes alive after dark with a soft, otherworldly glow that looks like something from a fantasy story. These bioluminescent bays are filled with microscopic organisms called dinoflagellates that emit light when disturbed by movement. Every splash, every paddle stroke, every passing fish sets off tiny sparks that turn the water into liquid starlight, glowing blue-green in the darkness. One of the most famous examples is Mosquito Bay in Puerto Rico, where the glow is so bright you can trace the path of a swimming turtle by the light trail it leaves behind, a glowing wake that fades slowly as the organisms settle. The effect comes from a chemical reaction inside the dinoflagellates, similar to how fireflies glow on land using stored energy to produce light without heat. Calm, shallow waters and warm temperatures create perfect conditions for these displays, which can be breathtaking to witness. Dip your hand into the water and lift it out. Droplets shimmer briefly on your fingers before fading as if the ocean itself is trying to remember you, trying to hold on to the moment of contact. Fact 30. Some mountains grow taller every year. Mountains may seem solid and unchanging, permanent features of the landscape that will outlast everything. But some are actually still rising, pushed upward by forces deep within the Earth. This happens because of tectonic activity where continental plates collide with tremendous force. Where these collisions occur, the crust is pushed upward, creating mountain ranges that continue to grow millimetre by millimetre each year. So slowly we cannot perceive it, but measurable with precise instruments. The Himalayas, home to Mount Everest, are still rising as the Indian plate presses into the Eurasian plate in a collision that has been ongoing for millions of years. Even though erosion wears mountains down over time, wind and water and ice constantly grinding away at the peaks, in places like this the upward force outpaces the wearing away. In geological terms, it is a rapid process, though far too slow for us to notice day by day, or even generation by generation. Scientists can measure this growth with satellite data, watching peaks inch higher over decades. It is a reminder that even landscapes we think of as ancient and fixed are still in motion, still being shaped by the same planetary forces that built them in the first place. Fact 33. Certain animals can live without oxygen for months. Most creatures on Earth need oxygen to survive, breathing it constantly to power their cells, but some have evolved to do without it for astonishing periods of time. The painted turtle, for example, can hibernate underwater in frozen lakes for more than 4 months, surviving without a single breath by slowing its metabolism to almost nothing and switching to anaerobic energy production that does not require oxygen at all. Some worms and small crustaceans living in deep oxygen-poor sediments on the ocean floor have adapted to extract energy in ways that bypass oxygen entirely, using sulfur compounds instead. Even more surprisingly, scientists have discovered tiny jellyfish-like creatures called Neguia salminicola that have no mitochondria, the cellular organs that normally use oxygen. This means they never use oxygen at all in their entire lives. For these animals, oxygen is not just optional, it is irrelevant. Such adaptations allow them to thrive in environments where most life could not last more than a few minutes, showing that survival can take forms we would not have imagined possible before studying them closely. Fact 34. Rainbows can appear as full circles from the air. From the ground where we normally stand, rainbows always appear as arcs, their bases hidden by the horizon stretching away in both directions. But from above, say from an airplane window or the top of a high mountain, you can sometimes see them as perfect circles surrounding your shadow. This happens because a rainbow is really a complete ring of light created when sunlight enters raindrops, bounces around inside them, and exits at a specific angle. On land, the ground cuts off the lower half of the circle from our view, hiding it below the horizon. From high in the air with no obstruction below you, the entire ring becomes visible floating in the mist. Pilots often see these circular rainbows, sometimes surrounding the shadow of their aircraft cast on clouds below, a phenomenon known as a glory. It is a vivid reminder that the beauty we see from our usual perspective is often just a fraction of the whole picture. That changing your viewpoint quite literally can reveal a world that has been there all along just out of sight, waiting for someone to rise high enough to witness it. Fact 35. Some deserts are colder than ice. When we think of deserts, we imagine scorching heat, sand dunes baking under merciless sun, temperatures that make the air shimmer. But a desert is defined by dryness, not temperature. It is a place where precipitation is extremely rare, where water almost never falls from the sky. By that definition, the largest deserts on Earth are Antarctica and the Arctic, frozen landscapes where precipitation is so rare they qualify as deserts despite being covered in ice. Antarctica is the coldest, driest, and windiest place on the planet, with temperatures regularly plunging below -70 degrees Celsius, cold enough to freeze exposed skin in seconds. Yet beneath the ice, microbial life persists in pockets of liquid water trapped in darkness, and hardy lichens cling to exposed rocks in areas where wind has cleared away the snow. These polar deserts are as extreme as any hot desert, their beauty lying in stark contrasts. The blinding whiteness of snow under endless daylight in summer, the eerie blue glow of ice caves carved by meltwater, the frozen stillness that can last for centuries without change. It is a reminder that desert does not always mean sand and heat. Sometimes it means ice and silence stretching to the horizon. Fact 36. There are waterfalls that flow upward in strong winds. In certain conditions, when powerful winds meet the right landscape, they can catch the falling water of a tall waterfall and push it back upward, creating the surreal sight of water seemingly defying gravity. This effect is most common along coastal cliffs, where ocean winds are funneled upward against the rock face with tremendous force. The wind's strength can be so great that the waterfall appears to reverse direction, its spray streaming into the sky instead of falling to the pool below. In reality, the water is not going back to its source. It is being broken into fine mist and carried away by the wind before it can complete its fall. The spectacle is fleeting, lasting only as long as the gusts hold their strength. But while it happens, it can make a familiar landscape feel transformed, as if the rules of nature had momentarily shifted and nothing works the way it should. Visitors who witness it often stand in disbelief, watching water climb upward and vanish into clouds, wondering if their eyes are playing tricks. Factor 37. Some seeds can survive for thousands of years before growing. Seeds are nature's time capsules, tiny packages of life protected by tough outer shells that can withstand almost anything. Some can lie dormant for centuries, waiting patiently for the right conditions to sprout. In one remarkable case that made headlines around the world, scientists revived a date palm seed found in the ruins of Masada in Israel that was nearly 2,000 years old, dating back to the time of ancient Rome. Certain Arctic tundra plants produce seeds that can last even longer when trapped in frozen soil, their internal clocks stopped by the cold. Inside each seed, the embryo remains suspended in a state of near-zero activity. Barely alive but not dead, it stored nutrients preserved perfectly. When warmth, moisture, and light finally return, the seed wakes up and begins to grow, bridging vast stretches of time in a single act of renewal. It is as if the plant has been holding its breath for centuries, ready to return to life when the world is ready for it, when conditions align perfectly for growth. Fact 38. There are animals that can clone themselves. Some creatures can reproduce without mating, creating exact genetic copies of themselves. This process, called asexual reproduction, is common in simple organisms like bacteria, but also occurs in more complex animals. Starfish can regenerate lost arms, and in some cases an entire new starfish can grow from a single limb if it contains enough of the central body. The original and the new one are genetically identical, perfect clones. Certain freshwater animals called hydras simply bud off miniature versions of themselves that grow and break away to live independently. Some insects can lay eggs that develop into clones without fertilization, allowing a single female to create an entire population. In stable environments, cloning allows a species to multiply quickly without needing to find mates or spend energy on courtship. The downside is less genetic diversity, which can make populations vulnerable to disease or environmental changes, but in the right circumstances it is a remarkably efficient way to ensure survival, turning one individual into many without any help. Fact 39. Certain plants can count the hours of daylight. Many plants have an internal clock, a circadian rhythm that helps them keep track of time passing. Some use this ability to measure the length of each day, a process called photoperiodism, which tells them when to flower, when to grow new leaves, or when to prepare for winter by shedding old ones. For example, chrysanthemums bloom only when nights reach a certain length, ensuring they flower at the right time for their pollinators. Other plants wait for days to be long enough to guarantee summer warmth before producing flowers. This timing can be so precise that plants kept in artificial light cycles will still open and close their flowers at the correct times, as if they remember the natural rhythm even without cues from the actual sun. It is a subtle intelligence, a way of reading the seasons through the changing angle of sunlight and the lengthening or shortening of days, allowing plants to synchronize their lives with the turning of the year. Fact 40. There are clouds heavier than mountains. A single large thundercloud can hold millions of tons of water, far outweighing an entire mountain in mass. The reason it does not fall all at once in a catastrophic deluge is that the water is suspended in tiny droplets or ice crystals spread out over a vast area, supported by rising air currents called updrafts that push upward with tremendous force. When conditions shift and the updrafts weaken, some of that water condenses and falls as rain, hail, or snow, releasing the weight gradually. These colossal clouds can stretch for kilometers across the sky and tower high into the atmosphere, their tops glowing white in sunlight while their undersides churn with shadow and lightning. Seeing one build on the horizon, it is hard to imagine that something so airy-looking could be so heavy, heavier than the solid rock of the mountains. Yet they drift overhead as easily as a handful of feathers carried on the wind, held aloft by the invisible strength of warm air rising from the heated ground below. Fact 41. Some creatures can survive in boiling water. In the extreme environments around deep-sea hydrothermal vents where volcanic activity heats the ocean floor, water temperatures can reach over 100 degrees Celsius, hot enough to boil an egg instantly and kill most life forms. Yet certain microorganisms called hyperthermophiles thrive in these conditions, their bodies adapted in ways that seem impossible. They have evolved proteins and cell structures that remain stable at extreme heat, holding together when the proteins in our own cells would unravel and stop working. Some live in the scalding runoff of geysers on land such as those in Yellowstone National Park, where tourists gather to watch them erupt. These heat-loving microbes form the base of entire food webs in these extreme places, supporting tube worms, clams, and crabs that cluster around vent openings where hot water pours into the cold ocean. Studying them has revealed enzymes that can withstand temperatures far beyond what was once thought possible for life, challenging our understanding of biology and expanding our search for life in harsh environments beyond Earth. In places where water boils and darkness reigns, they quietly flourish, proving that life's limits are far wider than we once believed. Fact 42. The ocean's deepest point is deeper than Mount Everest is tall. Far beneath the Pacific Ocean lies the Mariana Trench, home to the Challenger Deep, the deepest known point in all of Earth's oceans. At nearly 11 kilometers down, it is deeper than the height of Mount Everest above sea level. If you could place Everest in the trench, its peak would still be over 2 kilometers underwater, completely submerged. The pressure there is over 1,000 times greater than at the surface, enough to crush most submarines like tin cans. The darkness is absolute. No trace of sunlight has reached that depth in all of Earth's history. Temperatures hover just above freezing despite being closer to the planet's hot core. Yet life exists even here in the crushing pressure and eternal night. Tiny arthropods scuttle across the sediment. Strange snailfish with translucent bodies glide through the water. Resilient microbes survive in the mud, feeding on organic material that drifts down from the sunlit upper ocean like snow falling from the sky. Very few people have ever visited the Challenger Deep. It has been visited by humans fewer times than the Moon, but unmanned probes have mapped its alien landscape of slopes, trenches, and sediments. It is a reminder that some of Earth's most extreme frontiers remain largely unexplored, not in space, but in the silent depths of our own planet's oceans. Fact 43. Certain fish create their own underwater light shows. In the deep sea where sunlight never reaches and darkness is complete, many creatures produce light through bioluminescence. Some fish use it not only to lure prey that mistake the light for food, or to hide from predators by matching the faint glow from above, but also to communicate with each other in ways we are only beginning to understand. The flashlight fish, for example, has light-producing organs under its eyes that it can blink by covering them with skin flaps, creating patterns of light and darkness. Lanternfish carry glowing patterns along their bodies arranged differently in each species, which may help them recognize one another in the darkness and find mates. Some species flash in rhythmic pulses, creating patterns like Morse code in the water, sending messages whose meanings remain mostly mysterious to us. These displays can be mesmerizing to witness through the window of a deep-sea submersible, a drifting ballet of lights in total darkness as though the ocean floor has its own constellations. In a world without sunlight, light becomes a language written in flickers and glows, telling stories we have only just begun to understand. Fact 2. Some plants can taste when they are being eaten. Plants may seem passive, unable to sense their surroundings the way animals do, but many can detect and respond to damage almost instantly in ways that seem remarkably sophisticated. When a caterpillar bites into a leaf, some plants detect specific chemicals in the insect's saliva, recognizing the signature of the attacker. This triggers the release of defensive compounds, bitter or toxic chemicals that make the leaf less appetizing or even harmful to continue eating. In some cases, the plant even emits airborne signals that drift on the wind to nearby plants, warning them to activate their own defenses before the caterpillars arrive. This ability does not involve taste buds like ours, but rather chemical detection at the cellular level, sensors that can identify specific molecules and respond appropriately. To an insect, it is as if the meal suddenly turns sour mid-bite, becoming unpleasant or dangerous to continue. The process shows that plants are far from unaware. They are active participants in their own survival, able to read the world in ways that are subtle but highly effective, strategies refined over millions of years of being eaten. Fact 45. There are places where stones move on their own. In California's racetrack Playa, a dry lake bed in Death Valley, large rocks seem to slide across the ground, leaving long tracks behind them in the cracked mud. For decades, no one knew how they moved, especially since no one had ever seen it happen, despite cameras being set up to watch. The mystery was finally solved when researchers discovered that in rare winter conditions, a thin sheet of ice forms overnight across the playa. As morning arrives and the ice warms, it breaks apart into large floating panels. Light winds push these ice panels slowly across the wet surface, and rocks frozen into the ice are carried along with them. The movement is so gradual it can take hours for a rock to travel just a few meters, but over a winter season, they can trace paths hundreds of meters long. The result is a landscape marked with strange trails scratched into the dried mud, as if the stones had taken nighttime journeys across the desert floor while no one was watching, leaving only their tracks as evidence of impossible movement. Fact 46. Certain birds can mimic almost any sound. Some birds are gifted impressionists, able to copy sounds with uncanny accuracy that can fool even experienced observers. The lyrebird of Australia can imitate chainsaws, camera shutters, car alarms, other bird calls, and even human voices, weaving all these sounds into elaborate songs. Mockingbirds in North America combine dozens of different sounds into their performances, copying frogs, crickets, cell phone ringtones, and anything else they hear frequently. These abilities serve various purposes in the wild. They can help attract mates by demonstrating intelligence and memory, defend territory by making it sound like multiple birds are present, or simply show off to rivals. Young birds often learn their repertoires by listening closely to their surroundings from the moment they hatch, and the best mimics can pass these learned sounds down through generations, creating regional dialects of borrowed noises. To hear a bird in the forest perfectly mimic the exact sound of a barking dog or a crying baby is both surprising and oddly delightful, a reminder that nature's voices are not always what they seem, that the soundscape around us is more complex and playful than we usually notice. Fact 47. Some insects can see ultraviolet light. While humans see only a narrow range of wavelengths in the spectrum of light, many insects can detect ultraviolet light that is completely invisible to us no matter how we try to perceive it. Flowers often have ultraviolet markings that act as landing guides, pointing pollinators straight to their nectar with patterns that look to us like solid colours but to bees appear as elaborate bullseyes and stripes. Bees, butterflies, and some beetles navigate partly by reading these patches, which may look to them like glowing signs in what we see as uniform petals. Ultraviolet vision can also help insects spot predators or find mates that display UV patterns on their wings or bodies. For them, the world is painted with colours and contrasts we cannot imagine, no matter how hard we try. The same landscapes we know and walk through daily, but with a hidden dimension of light layered over everything, visible only to those with the right eyes to see it. Fact 48. The Sahara Desert was once green and full of life. Thousands of years ago, the Sahara was not an endless expanse of sand baking under a merciless sun. It was a vast savanna covered with grasslands dotted with lakes and rivers, home to abundant wildlife. Evidence from ancient lake beds discovered beneath the sand, rock art painted on cliff walls showing giraffes and crocodiles, and fossilized pollen preserved in sediment layers shows that hippos wallowed in rivers, crocodiles basked on riverbanks, and early human settlements thrived there. This green Sahara existed because Earth's tilt and orbit shifted slightly, bringing monsoon rains farther north than they reach today, and transforming the entire region into a fertile paradise. Over thousands of years, those patterns changed again as the planet's position shifted, drawing the land gradually into the desert we know today. It is a vivid example of how climates can shift dramatically over time, altering entire ecosystems and the course of human history. Beneath the sand, traces of its lush past remain buried like secrets, waiting to be uncovered by archaeologists and geologists who dig deep enough to find them. Fact 49. There are storms that last for centuries. On Jupiter, the Great Red Spot is a massive storm larger than Earth that has been raging for at least 300 years and possibly much longer. While our own planet's storms last days or weeks before dissipating, Jupiter's storms operate on a completely different scale, fed by the planet's turbulent atmosphere and lack of the solid surface to slow them down. The storm keeps spinning with winds reaching hundreds of kilometers per hour, powered by heat rising from Jupiter's interior and the planet's incredibly fast rotation. From space, it appears as a swirling red oval, an enduring scar in the gas giant's cloud bands that astronomers have been observing since the invention of telescopes powerful enough to see it. Studying it helps scientists understand not only Jupiter, but also how atmospheric systems might work on other planets we discover around distant stars, places where weather might be even more extreme and long-lasting than anything we can imagine. Fact 50. Certain frogs can turn transparent. The glass frogs of Central and South America have skin so translucent that their internal organs are visible from the outside. When resting on leaves, their hearts can be seen beating, their livers and intestines are visible as dark shapes, and even their eggs can be counted while still inside the female's body. This remarkable adaptation serves as camouflage, making them difficult for predators to spot against the veined leaves where they live. When threatened, some species can shift blood away from their skin to make themselves even more see-through, becoming almost invisible except for their eyes and a few opaque spots. This ability is not just for hiding, it also helps regulate their body temperature and protects them from harmful ultraviolet light in the bright rainforest canopy. Seeing one up close feels almost unreal, as if you were looking at a living anatomy model, its heartbeat and tiny movements visible beneath a delicate green surface. They remind us that evolution can create solutions to survival that seem impossible until you see them with your own eyes, strategies so unusual we would never think of them ourselves. Fact 51. Some trees can produce hundreds of gallons of sap in a season. Certain species like the sugar maple can yield vast amounts of sap each year, during a brief window in late winter and early spring. When temperatures swing between freezing nights and thawing days, pressure inside the tree changes dramatically, pushing sap through its vessels like blood through veins. Farmers and foragers tap into this flow by drilling small holes and collecting the liquid that drips out, which is mostly water with a hint of sugar dissolved in it. It can take more than 40 litres of sap to produce a single litre of maple syrup after boiling away all the excess water. But in a good season, when conditions are perfect, one mature tree might produce hundreds of litres of sap over several weeks. Sap is more than just a sweet sauce for humans making breakfast toppings. It transports water and nutrients to every part of the tree, fueling new growth after the dormancy of winter. Watching the clear liquid drip steadily from a tap in a sunlit forest feels like glimpsing the tree's heartbeat, flowing in rhythm with the slow arrival of spring, the awakening of life after months of cold sleep. Fact 52. There are rivers that boil. Deep in the Peruvian Amazon flows a river known as Shanay Timpishka, or boiled with the heat of the sun. Its water can reach temperatures near 100 degrees Celsius, hot enough to kill small animals that fall in and scald the skin of anyone foolish enough to touch it. Unlike volcanic hot springs that are common near active volcanoes, this river's heat comes from geothermal activity far underground, where water seeps deep into the earth through cracks in the bedrock, warms near hot rocks heated by the planet's interior, and returns to the surface miles away from any volcanic activity. The boiling river is over 6 kilometers long, winding through dense jungle and shrouded in steam that curls upward into the canopy where birds and monkeys watch from safe distances. For local communities, it holds cultural and spiritual significance, a place of power and danger. But it is also a scientific curiosity, a reminder that even far from volcanoes, the Earth's heat can shape the landscape in dramatic ways. Walking its banks, you would see leaves curling from the steam, hear the bubbling water alive with heat, and feel warmth on your face from meters away, all in the middle of a rainforest that should be cool and damp. Fact 53. Certain animals can live entirely in darkness. In the deepest caves and ocean trenches where no sunlight has ever penetrated, some animals are born into a world without light and never leave it. These species often lose their eyes completely over evolutionary time, since vision is useless in absolute darkness. Instead, they rely on heightened senses of touch, smell, or the ability to detect vibrations in water or air. The Mexican blind cavefish, for example, has skin that can detect subtle changes in water movement, allowing it to navigate through underground rivers and find food in total darkness. Deep-sea creatures like the tripod fish use their long fins to feel along the seafloor, sensing their surroundings without seeing them. In these pitch-black environments, vision is not just unhelpful, It is a waste of energy that could be better spent on other adaptations. Life in darkness may seem limiting to us who depend so heavily on our eyes, but to these animals it is perfectly normal, a complete thriving existence in a world beyond the reach of the sun. They hunt, mate, raise young, and go about their lives in conditions we would find terrifying, proving that light is not necessary for complex behavior or survival. Fact 54. Some shells grow in perfect mathematical spirals. Many mollusks and other shell-producing animals follow growth patterns that create spirals so precise they can be described by mathematical formulas discovered by humans thousands of years after the animals started making them. The nautilus, for example, builds its shell in a logarithmic spiral, adding larger chambers as it grows while maintaining the same overall shape throughout its life. Each new chamber is proportionally larger than the last, following a ratio that appears again and again in nature. This form is both strong and efficient, giving the animal protection from predators and buoyancy control to rise and sink in the ocean. Such spirals appear elsewhere in nature beyond shells, in the arrangement of seeds in sunflowers, in the swirling arms of hurricanes, in the shape of galaxies spinning through space. They hint at a universal tendency towards certain patterns, mathematical relationships that govern growth from the smallest sea creature to the largest structures in the cosmos. When you hold a shell and trace the spiral inward with your finger, you are following a path that nature has repeated on vastly different scales, from the tiniest seashell fitting in your palm to the sweeping arms of the Milky Way stretching across light years of space. Fact 55. There are clouds that glow in the night sky. High in the atmosphere, more than 80 kilometers above the ground, where the air is incredibly thin, delicate clouds sometimes shimmer after sunset with a silvery blue light that seems magical. These are noctilucent clouds formed when ice crystals gather on dust particles in the upper mesosphere, where temperatures drop to some of the coldest in Earth's atmosphere. They are illuminated not by the sun directly overhead, but by sunlight from beyond the horizon, catching rays that no longer reach the ground. Most visible at high latitudes during summer months, when conditions are right, they seem almost unreal, like ghostly veils rippling in the upper sky against the deepening twilight. Scientists think they may be becoming more common as changes in Earth's atmosphere provide more moisture at high altitudes, though the exact reasons are still being studied. Watching them feels like witnessing the sky itself breathing in silver light, a phenomenon so rare and beautiful that people who see them often remember the experience for the rest of their lives. Fact 56. Certain spiders can sail across the ocean. Some species of spiders use silk not just for webs to catch prey, but for travel in a behavior scientists call ballooning. They climb to high points, release strands of silk into the air, and wait for the wind. When the breeze catches their silk threads, it lifts them off the ground like tiny kites, carrying them away from where they started. While most ballooning journeys are short, covering just a few meters or kilometers, some spiders have been found hundreds of kilometers out at sea, drifting on air currents far from any land. Scientists believe they can survive these journeys by resting on floating debris when they land on the water, catching airborne insects, and waiting for another breeze to carry them onward. This ability allows spiders to colonize new islands and remote coastlines, arriving as some of the first inhabitants after volcanic eruptions or other disturbances create new land. Watching one prepare to launch is remarkable. It stands on tiptoe, raises its abdomen, releases silk into the breeze, and then simply lets go, drifting into the air, borne upward by nothing but a thread thinner than human hair, embarking on a voyage with no certain destination. Fact 57. Some animals can survive for years without food. In extreme environments where meals are unpredictable, survival sometimes means enduring long periods of starvation. The OLM, a cave-dwelling salamander found in parts of Europe, can go without food for up to 10 years by drastically slowing its metabolism to almost nothing, moving rarely and breathing slowly. Crocodiles and certain snakes can survive more than a year without eating, living off stored body fat and entering states of reduced activity. Even tiny creatures like tardigrades can enter a dormant state called cryptobiosis, where they dry out completely, halting almost all biological activity until conditions improve and water returns. These strategies are not just about endurance or toughness. They allow animals to survive in habitats where food comes in rare, unpredictable bursts, separated by long periods of scarcity. It proves that patience can be as important as speed or strength in the natural world, that sometimes doing nothing and waiting is the smartest survival strategy available. Fact 58. There are forests beneath the ocean. Off the coasts of many continents lie vast underwater kelp forests where giant seaweed sways gently with the currents like trees bending in wind. Giant kelp can grow over 0.5 meter per day under ideal conditions, reaching heights of more than 30 meters and creating a submerged canopy that shelters fish, sea otters, octopuses, and countless other species. These forests act as nurseries for marine life where young fish can hide from predators while they grow strong enough to venture into open water. They also help protect shorelines by breaking the force of waves before they reach the coast, reducing erosion. Sunlight streaming through the kelp gives the water an emerald glow, and the movement of the fronds can feel almost hypnotic to divers who swim among them, drifting through columns of swaying plants. Like forests on land, they are complex ecosystems with layers and niches, but here the trees are made of flexible leaf-like blades anchored to rocks by root-like structures called holdfasts, and instead of soil there is sand and stone covered in algae and anemones. Fact 59. Certain birds can sleep while flying. Some birds, like the frigate bird, spend days or even weeks in the air without landing, covering thousands of kilometers over open ocean. Scientists have discovered through tracking devices that they can rest by shutting down one half of their brain at a time while the other half stays alert, a process called unihemispheric slow-wave sleep. This allows them to maintain flight while still getting some rest, never fully asleep but never fully awake either. Even when both halves of the brain are resting in turns, they may continue circling on rising thermals, warm air currents that lift them higher without requiring wing beats. It is an adaptation that allows them to cover vast distances without needing to pause, turning the sky itself into their bed. To imagine sleeping while flying is to understand how different their experience of life must be from ours. Existing in a state between waking and dreaming as they travel above oceans that stretch to every horizon. Fact 60. Some rocks can sing when the wind passes over them. In certain desert landscapes where conditions align perfectly, steady winds can set large boulders or entire dunes vibrating, creating deep resonant tones that carry for kilometers across empty land. These singing rocks or booming dunes produce sounds that can last for minutes after a disturbance, caused by grains of sand or rock surfaces rubbing together in just the right way, creating vibrations that resonate through the formation. Marco Polo described hearing such sounds during his travels through the Gobi Desert centuries ago, strange music rising from the landscape itself. The effect is haunting, a natural low hum that seems to come from the earth itself, as if the landscape were breathing a slow rumbling song into the air. Scientists still debate the exact physics behind it, but the experience of standing in a silent desert and hearing stones sing without any visible cause is unforgettable. A reminder that nature can make music without instruments or musicians. Fact 61. There are deserts made of pure white sand. Not all deserts are the color of golden wheat or rusty red rock. In southern New Mexico lies White Sands National Park, a vast expanse of brilliant white dunes stretching as far as the eye can see. The sand here is made of gypsum crystals, a mineral that is rare in large dune fields because it dissolves easily in water and usually washes away. But in this desert basin, there is nowhere for water to flow out when it rains. Ancient lakes formed and evaporated repeatedly over thousands of years, leaving behind thick layers of gypsum. Wind sculpted these deposits into rippling dunes that sparkle under the sun and glow pale blue under moonlight like something from another planet. Walking here feels almost like stepping into the snow, even though the air is warm and dry, the ground crunching softly underfoot. The whiteness is so bright it can be seen from space. Astronauts aboard the International Space Station can spot it easily, a gleaming desert unlike any other on Earth where the sand looks like powdered sugar spread across valleys. Factor 62. Some jellyfish can live forever. The tiny jellyfish Torritopsis dornii has a remarkable ability that scientists are still trying to fully understand. When stressed, injured, or near death, it can revert its cells to an earlier stage of life and start its life cycle over again. Instead of dying, it essentially transforms back into a juvenile polyp, a simpler form that attaches to surfaces and begins growing anew. This process, called transdifferentiation, allows it to potentially avoid death from old age entirely, making it biologically immortal in theory. Found in oceans around the world, these jellyfish are only a few millimeters across, their delicate bodies nearly transparent and easy to miss. While immortality remains more of a survival strategy than a guarantee, since they can still be eaten by predators or die from disease, it is an astonishing reminder that in nature, even something as final as aging can sometimes be rewritten. The ability challenges our understanding of life and death, suggesting that the boundary between them might be more flexible than we imagine. Fact 63. Certain ants farm their own food. Leafcutter ants are among the most industrious farmers on Earth, creating agricultural systems that rival human complexity. They cut and carry pieces of leaves back to their underground colonies, marching in long lines with leaf fragments held overhead like green umbrellas. But they do not eat the leaves directly. Instead, they feed them to a special type of fungus they cultivate in carefully tended gardens deep underground, gardens they maintain with precision and care. The fungus breaks down the tough plant material into a form the ants can digest, producing nodules that the ants harvest and eat. This relationship is so precise and ancient that the fungus cannot survive without the ants tending it, and the ants cannot survive without the fungus feeding them. Colonies can contain millions of individuals, each with a specific role assigned by size. Some cut leaves, others carry them home, some tend the gardens, others defend the nest from invaders. It is an entire agricultural system perfected over millions of years of evolution, hidden beneath the forest floor, long before humans invented farming themselves. Fact 64. There are flowers that smell like rotting meat. Some plants attract pollinators not with sweet scents like roses or jasmine, but with the pungent stench of decay. The corpse flower, Amorphophallus titanum, can grow over 3 meters tall and releases a powerful odor that mimics rotting flesh when it blooms. This smell draws in carrion beetles and flesh flies which would normally seek out dead animals to lay their eggs, fooled by the scent into visiting the flower. Instead of finding death, they help pollinate the plant, transferring pollen as they move between blooms. The flowering is rare, often appearing only once every several years, and lasts for just a couple of days before the plant goes dormant again. During this brief time, the plant heats itself using stored energy, warming its tissues to help spread the smell farther across the surrounding forest. For those who can bear the stench, it is an unforgettable sight, a massive otherworldly bloom that uses deception and chemical trickery to ensure its reproduction. Fact 65. Some trees can survive complete fires. In fire-prone regions where wildfires sweep through regularly, certain trees have evolved remarkable adaptations to withstand even the most intense blazes. The giant sequoias of California, for example, have thick, spongy bark that can be up to 60 centimeters thick, insulating the living tissue inside from extreme heat. Some species of eucalyptus and pine have buds protected beneath their bark, allowing them to regrow quickly after fire passes. In fact, for many trees, fire is not just something to survive, but something essential for their reproduction. It clears away competing plants and helps their seeds germinate. Sequoia cones, for instance, are sealed with resin that melts in high heat, opening only after fire and releasing seeds into freshly cleared nutrient-rich soil, where young trees have the best chance of survival. These adaptations turn destruction into opportunity, ensuring that fire is not an end but a beginning, a reset that allows the forest to renew itself. Fact 66. There are animals that can see Earth's magnetic field. Some species, including certain birds, sea turtles, and even dogs, appear to have the ability to detect the planet's magnetic field, as if they were carrying invisible compasses inside their bodies. This sense, called magnetoreception, is thought to come from special proteins in their eyes that change when exposed to magnetic fields, or from tiny magnetic particles embedded in their tissues that respond to Earth's field. Birds use it to navigate during migration, travelling thousands of kilometres between breeding and wintering grounds with remarkable accuracy. Sea turtles use it to return to their birthplace decades after leaving, crossing entire oceans to lay eggs on the same beach where they hatched. Some mammals may use it to orient themselves while travelling through unfamiliar territory. For these animals, the magnetic field is like an invisible map overlaying the world. Guiding them across vast distances with precision, we can only achieve using instruments and satellites. Fact 67. Certain lakes are so clear you can see for hundreds of feet. Some bodies of water are so pure and undisturbed that visibility stretches down for astonishing depths, revealing the bottom as clearly as if there were no water at all. Blue Lake in New Zealand, for instance, is considered the clearest natural freshwater in the world with visibility up to 80 metres, farther than you can see through air on a hazy day. The clarity comes from water filtered through layers of rock and sand over many years, removing nearly all particles and organic matter. In places like this, looking into the water feels like peering through glass into another dimension. Schools of fish seem to float in air with no visible support. The lakebed's colours appear with striking sharpness, every stone and plant visible. Such pristine waters are rare and fragile, easily clouded by even small disturbances like a swimmer kicking up sediment or runoff from nearby land. Fact 68. Some whales sing songs that travel across entire oceans. Humpback whales are famous for their haunting songs, long complex sequences of sounds that can last for hours and carry for incredible distances through the water. These songs travel for hundreds and sometimes thousands of kilometres through the deep ocean, carried efficiently by water which transmits sound far better than air. Males sing most often during breeding season, and the songs can change over time, evolving and spreading through whale populations like folk tunes passed from singer to singer. Researchers believe they may serve multiple purposes: attracting mates from great distances, establishing territory, communicating information about ocean conditions. The exact meanings remain largely mysterious despite decades of study. Listening to a whale song recorded far from shore feels like hearing a voice from another world, slow and powerful and resonant with the vastness of the sea, carrying emotions or messages we can sense but not fully understand. Fact 69. There are storms that produce blue lightning. While most lightning appears white or yellow or purple, certain volcanic eruptions can produce vivid blue bolts that look almost supernatural. This phenomenon, known as volcanic lightning, occurs when ash particles in the eruption cloud collide violently, building up electrical charges just like water droplets in a thunderstorm. The blue colour comes from the ionization of volcanic gases like sulfur dioxide, which glow blue when electricity passes through them. These rare storms are both beautiful and dangerous, their eerie glow illuminating the roiling ash plumes that tower into the sky. Seen against the dark of night, blue lightning looks almost unnatural, as if the volcano was summoning fire from another realm entirely. Photographers brave enough to get close have captured images that look more like paintings than reality. Bolts of electric blue splitting the darkness above mountains of ash and glowing lava. Fact 70. Certain mosses can survive in space. Some species of moss and other simple plants have shown an extraordinary ability to survive the harsh conditions of space, where most complex life would die instantly. In experiments aboard the International Space Station, mosses were exposed to the vacuum of space where there is no air, to intense radiation from the sun, and to extreme temperature swings from boiling hot to freezing cold. After being brought back inside and given water, they revived and continued growing as if nothing had happened. Their resilience comes from specialized proteins and cellular structures that protect against dehydration and DNA damage, allowing them to enter dormant states and repair themselves later. This ability makes them valuable subjects for research into how life might endure on other planets or during long space journeys. The fact that a small green carpet of moss can survive where almost nothing else can is a quiet but powerful reminder of a life's tenacity. Fact 71. Some mushrooms glow in the dark. In forests around the world, certain fungi produce a gentle, eerie light known as bioluminescence, the same phenomenon that makes fireflies glow. This glow is the result of a chemical reaction involving luciferin, an organic compound that releases light when broken down. Scientists believe the light may attract insects that help spread the fungus's spores, or it may deter animals that would otherwise eat the mushrooms. The brightest examples, like the foxfire fungi of North America or the Mycena chlorophyll mushrooms of Asia, can illuminate the forest floor with a ghostly green glow on dark nights. For centuries, travellers told stories of glowing logs and mysterious lights in the woods, not knowing they were witnessing living fungi at work. Walking through such a forest at night feels otherworldly, as if the ground itself is sprinkled with fallen stars shining softly until dawn comes and the light fades away. Fact 72. There are plants that can live entirely underwater. While many plants tolerate occasional flooding or grow partly submerged, some are fully adapted to spend their entire lives underwater without ever breaking the surface. Aquatic plants like eelgrass, pondweed, and certain species of water lilies have evolved thin, flexible leaves that move gracefully with currents, and specialized tissues that carry oxygen from their leaves down to their roots buried in mud. These plants photosynthesize just like land plants, using sunlight to make food, but they draw dissolved carbon dioxide from the water instead of the air. In clear, shallow lakes and slow-moving rivers, dense meadows of underwater plants create habitats for fish, amphibians, and countless invertebrates. They also help stabilize sediments on the bottom and keep water clean by absorbing excess nutrients that would otherwise feed algae blooms. Though hidden from casual view, these underwater gardens are as vital to their ecosystems as any forest above the surface. Fact 73. Certain insects migrate farther than any other animal. Every year, tiny globe skimmer dragonflies embark on an epic migration that may cover over 18,000 kilometers, traveling from India across the Indian Ocean to Africa and back again over multiple generations. This journey may be the longest migration of any insect species, requiring incredible endurance for creatures that weigh less than a gram. Monarch butterflies also make remarkable journeys, flying thousands of kilometers from Canada and the United States to wintering grounds in the mountains of central Mexico. These migrations are guided by environmental cues like temperature and day length, the position of the sun, and even Earth's magnetic field. For such small creatures, the endurance and navigation required are extraordinary, challenging even the largest and strongest animals. Their journeys span vast distances and cross obstacles that would seem impossible for something so delicate, proving that size is no limit to determination and capability in the natural world. Fact 74. Some rivers disappear underground and reappear miles away. In karst landscapes where limestone bedrock is riddled with cracks and caves dissolved by slightly acidic rainwater over millions of years, rivers can vanish into the ground and flow unseen through subterranean passages before emerging far downstream. The Puerto Princesa underground river in the Philippines travels for over 8 kilometers beneath the surface through enormous caves before spilling into the sea at a hidden outlet. In some cases, explorers can follow these hidden waterways in boats through vast underground chambers, their ceilings glittering with mineral formations like stalactites and stalagmites that have been growing for thousands of years. These disappearing rivers shape the land both above and below, carving tunnels through rock, feeding springs that bubble up in unexpected places, and creating unique ecosystems adapted to life in perpetual darkness. Standing where a river vanishes into the earth is a strange experience. Watching water that was flowing in sunlight suddenly drop into blackness and continue its journey where you cannot follow. Fact 75. There are forests where the trees all share the same root system. Some groves of trees are not made up of individuals at all. They are a single organism connected underground, sharing nutrients and water and growing as one. Aspen forests, for example, can grow from one root network that sends up new trunks called suckers. Above ground, each tree may look separate with its own trunk and branches, but below the surface they are genetically identical clones, connected by roots that can extend for kilometers. The largest known example is a quaking aspen colony in Utah called Pando, which spans over 40 hectares and may weigh 6 million kilograms, making it one of the heaviest organisms on Earth. Scientists estimate it could be thousands of years old, perhaps one of the oldest living things on the planet. This underground connection allows the forest to recover quickly from damage like fire or logging, as new shoots rise to replace what was lost. It blurs the line between individual and community, showing that sometimes what looks like many is really one a single living being expressing itself through countless bodies reaching toward the sky. Facts 76 to 100. 5,000, 6,000 words. Fact 76. Certain flowers change color to attract different pollinators. Some flowers shift their colors as they age, sending signals to potential visitors about which blooms are worth investigating. The tropical plant Lantana camara, for example, opens with yellow flowers that later turn orange and then red as days pass. Pollinators like butterflies and bees quickly learn that the younger yellow flowers hold more nectar, while older red ones have already been visited and offer little reward. This colour shift helps ensure that pollinators focus their energy on the flowers most likely to be fertile and ready for pollination, improving the plant's chances of successful reproduction. In some alpine species, flowers change colour immediately after pollination occurs, turning from bright attractive hues to dull browns or purples that tell passing insects not to waste their time landing. It is a quiet visual conversation between plant and animal, carried out through pigments and patterns that communicate as clearly as spoken words, guiding behaviour without any sound or movement. Fact 77. Some mountains are made entirely of salt, and in certain parts of the world ancient seas evaporated millions of years ago, leaving behind massive deposits of salt that piled up layer after layer. Over immense spans of time, tectonic forces pushed these deposits upward, creating mountains of crystalline salt that rise from the surrounding landscape. Iran's Ku-e-Namak, or Mount of Salt, is a striking example with gleaming white slopes streaked with mineral colours, ranging from pink to grey. In Bolivia, the world's largest salt flat, Salar de Uyuni, also hides raised ridges of pure salt along its edges where wind and water have sculpted formations. These salt mountains are slowly eroded by wind and rain, which dissolve the crystals and carry them away, revealing intricate structures and sometimes even caves carved into the salt. Their origins remind us that today's highest places were once ocean floors where ancient seas deposited minerals grain by grain, only to have those floors lifted thousands of meters into the sky by the restless movements of Earth's crust. Fact: Chetun. There are plants that remember past droughts. Some plants have a form of memory that allows them to adjust their growth and water use based on past experiences of stress. Scientists have found that after a period of severe dryness, certain plants can remember the hardship through changes in their gene expression, chemical markers that persist in their cells. If another drought occurs weeks or months later, they respond more quickly than plants that never experienced the first dry spell. They close the tiny pores on their leaves called stomata to conserve water, activate protective chemicals, and shift resources to their roots. This memory does not involve a brain or nervous system like animals have. Instead, it relies on stored chemical signals that last long after the initial event has passed, a molecular record of survival. Such adaptations allow them to thrive in unpredictable climates, where resilience and quick responses can mean the difference between survival and withering away under a merciless sun. Fact 79. Certain fish can leap up waterfalls. During spawning migrations, some fish must travel upstream against powerful currents, leaping up waterfalls that would seem impossible to overcome. Salmon are the most famous for this feat, launching themselves with incredible precision and strength to land in the pools above each cascade. They can jump heights of several meters, twisting their bodies in mid-air to adjust their trajectory. Smaller species like gobies in Hawaii climb waterfalls using suction cup-like fins that grip wet rock, inching their way up sheer faces that would defeat most climbers. These migrations are exhausting journeys that can last weeks, pushing the fish to their physical limits. But they are essential, driven by ancient instincts that compel the fish to return to the exact environments where they were born to lay their own eggs. The sight of a fish hurling itself repeatedly at a roaring waterfall, failing and trying again until it succeeds or exhausts itself, is a powerful display of determination in the face of what seems like impossible odds. Fact 80. Some deserts have lakes hidden deep below the sand. Beneath the barren surfaces of some deserts lie vast underground reservoirs called aquifers, hidden oceans of fresh water trapped in porous rock layers. In places like the Sahara, these hidden lakes can stretch for hundreds of kilometers beneath the dunes, holding ancient water that fell as rain thousands of years ago when the climate was wetter and the desert was green. Occasionally, this water reaches the surface through natural springs or human-dug wells, creating oases that stand out as islands of green in otherwise lifeless expanses. In other cases, it remains trapped far below, revealed only through modern drilling technology. These underground lakes are lifelines for people, animals, and plants in some of the harshest landscapes on Earth. They prove that even in places where the surface appears utterly dry, the potential for life-giving water can be quietly stored away beneath your feet, waiting for its moment to return to the surface and nourish the world above. Fact 81. There are animals that can survive in both boiling and freezing water. Some of the most extreme survivors on Earth live in conditions that swing between scorching heat and bitter cold, adapting to both with equal success. Certain species of extremophile microbes thrive in deep-sea hydrothermal vents, where temperatures can exceed 100 degrees Celsius, yet can also endure near-freezing waters in the same location when volcanic activity pauses. The Antarctic icefish lives in sub-zero seas thanks to antifreeze proteins in its blood that prevent ice crystals from forming and destroying its cells. Tardigrades, microscopic animals called water bears, can survive both boiling temperatures and being frozen solid by entering cryptobiosis, a state where their bodies dry out completely and metabolic activity nearly stops. These creatures prove that life's boundaries are far more flexible than we imagine, enduring conditions that would destroy most living things within seconds, and thriving in places where extremes coexist side by side. Fact 82. Certain birds navigate using the stars. For thousands of years, migratory birds have travelled vast distances with astonishing accuracy, finding their way across continents and oceans without maps or compasses. Some species, like the indigo bunting, use the position of constellations around the North Star to orient themselves at night, reading the sky like sailors once did before modern navigation. Even young birds raised in captivity without any prior migration experience can recognise these celestial cues, suggesting the ability is built into their biology. In the southern hemisphere, where different stars are visible, other constellations serve as navigational markers. Birds combine this star-based map with their sense of Earth's magnetic field and the position of the sun during the day to create a multi-layered navigation system that rarely fails. Experiments in planetariums have shown that altering the artificial star patterns can confuse them, confirming that the night sky itself serves as their primary guide through darkness. Fact 83. Some animals use tools to solve problems. Tool use was once thought to be uniquely human, something that separated us from all other life. But many animals have proven this idea wrong through observations in the wild. Chimpanzees strip leaves from twigs to make fishing rods for extracting termites from their mounds. Sea otters use flat stones as anvils, placing them on their chests while floating and smashing shellfish against them to crack open the hard shells. Crows in urban areas have learned to drop nuts onto roads where cars will crack them, then wait for traffic lights to change before retrieving their meal safely. Even dolphins have been observed carrying marine sponges over their snouts to protect themselves while foraging along sharp coral that could injure their sensitive skin. These behaviours often require learning and creativity, sometimes being taught between generations as young animals watch their elders. Tool use blurs the line between instinct and intelligence, showing that problem-solving ability takes many forms throughout the animal kingdom. Fact 84. There are caves that breathe. In some cave systems, the air seems to move in and out as though the cave itself were a living lung. This breathing happens when outside air pressure changes due to weather patterns or temperature shifts between day and night, forcing air into or out of the cave's openings. In large interconnected cave networks, the effect can be surprisingly strong, powerful enough to rustle leaves near entrances, move dust in visible clouds, or extinguish candles held too close to the opening. Mammoth Cave in Kentucky and Wind Cave in South Dakota are famous for this phenomenon, with winds that can reach significant speeds during pressure changes. To step into one of these caves during an exhale and feel cool air rushing past you from the darkness within is to be reminded that underground spaces are not static tombs. They are connected to the living atmosphere above, breathing in rhythm with weather patterns and temperature cycles that link the surface world to the hidden realm below. Fact 85. Certain trees release scents to warn others of danger. When attacked by insects, some trees release airborne chemicals called volatile organic compounds that drift on the wind to nearby trees of the same species. These neighbouring trees detect the warning molecules through receptors on their leaves and respond by producing bitter or toxic compounds that make their foliage less appealing or even harmful to the pests that might arrive next. Acacia trees in Africa are particularly well known for this behaviour, filling the air with chemical signals that can prompt an entire grove to defend itself almost simultaneously, creating a united front against attacking insects. The same chemicals can also attract predators or parasites that target the attacking insects, calling in reinforcements from other species. It is a silent alarm system carried invisibly through the air, turning a forest into a community that warns and protects its members without any sound or visible communication. Fact 88. Certain plants can release heat. Some plants, like the eastern skunk cabbage, can generate enough heat through rapid chemical reactions in their cells to melt surrounding snow in early spring. This ability, called thermogenesis, comes from burning stored energy in a process similar to shivering in animals, producing warmth instead of storing the energy for later use. The heat helps the plant emerge early, when most other vegetation is still dormant, giving it access to sunlight and pollinators before competitors appear. It also helps attract pollinators by releasing scent more effectively in cold weather, warming the air around the flower so odor molecules spread farther. In tropical regions, other plants use heat to intensify their fragrances, drawing in pollinators from greater distances. While rare, this ability shows that plants can manipulate their environment in ways we usually associate only with warm-blooded animals. Fact 89. Some rocks are older than the continents. Scattered across Earth's surface are mineral grains called zircons that date back over 4 billion years, making them older than the oldest known continental crust. These tiny crystals, often no bigger than grains of sand, formed when the planet was still young, shortly after the surface cooled enough for liquid water to exist and before the continents as we know them had begun to form. Found in places like Western Australia embedded in much younger rocks, zircons have survived erosion, burial under kilometres of sediment, and the recycling of rock through Earth's interior. They carry within their crystal structure chemical clues about early Earth's conditions, including evidence that liquid water existed far earlier than previously thought. Holding one is like holding a fragment of the planet's childhood, a survivor from a time when Earth looked nothing like it does today. Fact 90. There are insects that can walk on water. Water striders with their long, delicate legs can skim across the surface of ponds and streams without sinking, a feat that seems to defy logic. This is possible because their legs are covered in microscopic hairs that repel water, and because they are light enough that the surface tension of the water can support them. Surface tension is the cohesive force between water molecules that creates a kind of elastic skin on the water's surface. By distributing their weight carefully and using rapid controlled movements, water striders glide effortlessly across this skin to catch prey or escape predators. Watching them dart across a still pond is like seeing tiny skaters performing on a liquid stage, each movement creating perfect ripples that spread outward in concentric circles. Fact 91. Certain forests can make their own clouds. In some tropical regions, vast forests help create the clouds that hover above them through a process that links the trees directly to the sky. Trees release water vapor into the air through transpiration, moisture evaporating from millions of leaves. When this vapor cools as it rises, it condenses into tiny droplets that form clouds. In dense forests like the Amazon, this cycle repeats daily though, with the forest essentially breathing out moisture that becomes clouds which later release rain back onto the forest in an endless loop. Scientists have observed that deforestation can reduce cloud formation dramatically, altering entire climate systems and reducing rainfall hundreds of kilometers away. From above, these forest-made clouds look like soft blankets floating over green seas of vegetation, each one a product of countless tiny breaths from the living world below, proof of the connection between land and sky. Fact 92. Some animals can recognize themselves in mirrors. Self-recognition was once thought to be uniquely human, a sign of consciousness and self-awareness. But several animal species can pass the mirror test, demonstrating they understand that the reflection they see is themselves. Great apes like chimpanzees and orangutans can use mirrors to inspect parts of their bodies they cannot normally see. Dolphins and elephants show similar abilities, investigating marks placed on their bodies only after seeing them in a reflection. Even certain birds like magpies have passed the test, using mirrors to locate and remove stickers placed on their feathers. While not all creatures pass this test, those that do hint at a level of self-awareness and consciousness we are only beginning to understand, suggesting that the boundary between human and animal minds may be less distinct than we once believed. Fact 93. There are plants that can eat small animals. Carnivorous plants like the Venus flytrap sundew and pitcher plant have evolved to trap and digest animals, mostly insects, but sometimes even small frogs or lizards. They live in nutrient-poor soils where normal plants struggle to find enough nitrogen and minerals to survive, so they supplement their diet by capturing prey. Each species has developed its own hunting strategy. Sticky leaves that hold insects like flypaper, snapping traps with interlocking teeth, deep pitchers filled with digestive fluid where prey drowns. Once an animal is caught, the plant slowly breaks it down over days or weeks, absorbing nutrients through specialized tissues. These adaptations are not about aggression or hunting for sport. They're about survival, allowing plants to thrive in environments where others would slowly starve from lack of nutrients. Fact 94. Certain lakes are filled with water so dense it is almost impossible to sink. In some hypersaline lakes like the Dead Sea between Israel and Jordan, the water's salt concentration is so high that it becomes far denser than the human body. This extreme density allows people to float effortlessly on the surface without any effort, lying back and reading a book while the water holds them up like a mattress. The same properties make these lakes inhospitable to most aquatic life, since the high salinity disrupts cellular functions in all but the most specialized microorganisms. Swimming in such water feels strange and unnatural. Your body sits high on the surface. The water has an oily thickness to it. Buoyancy is so strong it can hold you upright without treading water. The experience is unforgettable, like discovering that gravity works differently in this one place, that the normal rules of sinking and floating have been suspended. Fact 95. Some birds build structures more complex than human houses. Male bowerbirds in Australia and New Guinea are famous architects, constructing elaborate bowers to attract mates. These are not nests but display structures, arched or hut-like formations decorated with shells, flowers, feathers, berries, and even bits of colourful plastic or glass they scavenge. Each male develops his own aesthetic style, arranging objects by size, shape or colour in patterns that demonstrate his attention to detail and artistic sense. Some even paint their bowers using crushed berries mixed with saliva. Weaver birds create intricately woven nests suspended from branches with entry tunnels designed to deter snakes and other predators, structures so complex they can take weeks to build. These avian architects work with astonishing precision and creativity, building homes and displays that rival human craftsmanship in beauty and ingenuity. Fact 96. There are stones that grow over time. In certain parts of Romania, unusual rock formations called trovants seem to grow and change shape over decades, though they are not alive in any conventional sense. After heavy rain, these stones can appear to sprout new layers or bulges, caused by mineral-rich water seeping through their porous structure and depositing additional material on their surfaces. While the growth is incredibly slow, just a few millimeters per year, it challenges our perception of rocks as unchanging, permanent objects. Left undisturbed for centuries, these stones can grow large enough to split or develop strange bulbous shapes, as if the landscape itself were alive and slowly shifting. They are a reminder that even the most solid-seeming things can change given enough time, that the boundary between living and non-living is not always as clear as we assume. Fact 97. Tamil creatures have existed unchanged for hundreds of millions of years. Some species are so perfectly adapted to their environments that they have remained virtually unchanged for immense spans of time, surviving while countless other species evolved or went extinct around them. Horseshoe crabs, for example, have been walking the ocean floor for over 400 million years, outlasting dinosaurs and ice ages and mass extinctions that wiped out most other life. The coelacanth, a deep-sea fish once thought extinct, still swims in much the same form it did over 300 million years ago. A living fossil unchanged since before the first reptiles walked on land. These ancient survivors are reminders that evolution does not always mean dramatic change. Sometimes it means finding a design so effective that nothing needs to improve. A body plan so successful that it endures across geological ages, while the world transforms around it. Fact 98. Some places on Earth have never been touched by humans. Even in our era of satellites and global travel, even with billions of people spread across every continent, there are parts of the planet where no human has ever set foot. Some are remote mountain peaks too dangerous or isolated to reach. Others are hidden caves discovered only recently, deep ocean trenches that remain unexplored, isolated islands surrounded by treacherous currents. Stretches of rainforest so dense and remote that they remain inaccessible without enormous effort and risk. These untouched places serve as living time capsules, holding ecosystems undisturbed for thousands of years, operating by rules and balances we have never witnessed. They remind us that despite our reach and our technology, much of Earth still belongs entirely to itself, wild and unknown and operating without any human presence or influence. Fact 99. There are rivers beneath the ice of Antarctica, beneath Antarctica's massive ice sheets that can be several kilometers thick, hidden rivers and lakes flow in complete darkness. These subglacial waterways are kept liquid by geothermal heat rising from below and the immense pressure of the overlying ice pressing down from above, creating conditions where water remains liquid despite temperatures that would freeze it at the surface. Some of these rivers connect large subglacial lakes, creating entire hidden drainage systems that scientists are only beginning to map. Researchers study them by drilling carefully through the ice, lowering instruments into water that has been isolated from the surface for millions of years. They have found microbial life surviving in these lightless waters, communities of bacteria and other simple organisms that have evolved in complete isolation. These secret rivers show that even in one of the coldest, driest, most inhospitable places on Earth, water still moves and life still finds ways to persist. Factor 100. Some deserts sing when the wind blows over their dunes. In a few sandy deserts around the world, steady winds or the natural sliding of sand down dune faces can produce deep humming tones that carry for kilometers across empty landscapes. This singing or booming sound happens when grains of a certain size, shape, and dryness slide together in large numbers, their friction creating a resonant vibration that builds into an audible sound. The tone can be loud enough to feel in your chest, like a musical note played by the landscape itself, a deep hum that rises and falls with the wind. Marco Polo described such sounds during his travels through the Gobi Desert centuries ago, calling them the voices of spirits. They remain one of the strangest and most beautiful natural phenomena in arid lands, a reminder that even seemingly lifeless places have voices of their own, songs written in sand and wind that have been playing long before humans arrived to listen. And so our slow journey through the hidden wonders of nature comes to a gentle close. We have wandered from ancient trees standing silent for thousands of years, to glowing bays that light up the night, from deserts that sing to forests that breathe and make their own weather. We have discovered along the way that life's creativity knows no bounds, that survival takes forms we could never predict, and that beauty exists in places we might never think to look. Some of these stories were about endurance, plants and animals adapting to extremes that would seem impossible, finding ways to live where life should not exist. Others were about unexpected beauty, colours and patterns and landscapes that feel like they were created just to inspire wonder. Many were about mystery, things we can explain only partially, leaving space for questions and amazement to keep growing in our minds. As you rest now, you might picture the quiet pulse of a bioluminescent bay at night, each wave glowing blue-green in the darkness, or the slow, patient turning of a forest canopy making its own clouds through countless tiny breaths. You might drift through an underwater kelp forest where light filters down in emerald shafts, or stand beneath an ancient bristlecone pine that has witnessed more history than any book could record. The world is full of places you may never visit in person, creatures you may never see with your own eyes, yet they exist all the same, thriving and shifting and holding their secrets until someone takes the time to look closely and really see. The truth is, you do not have to travel far to find wonder. Sometimes it is right outside your door, waiting in the rustle of leaves in evening wind or the cool scent of rain approaching on a summer afternoon. Thank you for letting me share these moments with you tonight. If you happen to still be awake, if your mind is still active and curious, you can watch the next video now and continue learning. But if your eyes are heavy and your thoughts are beginning to drift like clouds across an evening sky, you can let them go. Nature will still be here when you wake, patient and timeless and endlessly full of stories waiting to be discovered. Good night. Fact 86. The hidden rivers and waterfalls beneath the waves, deep beneath the ocean's surface, exists a world of flowing water that moves independently from the currents above. These underwater rivers and waterfalls form through subtle but powerful differences in the physical properties of seawater itself. When water masses with different temperatures, salinity levels, and densities meet, they don't simply mix together. Instead, the denser water sinks below the lighter water, creating distinct layers that can flow along the seafloor like invisible rivers, carving through an aquatic landscape. These submarine rivers maintain their separate identity as they travel, bounded not by the riverbanks but by the surrounding water of different density. They meander across the ocean floor, following underwater valleys and canyons, sometimes travelling hundreds or even thousands of kilometres from their source. When these dense water masses encounter underwater cliffs, escarpments, or sudden changes in seafloor topography, they cascade downward, creating submerged waterfalls that operate on a scale that makes terrestrial waterfalls seem miniature by comparison. The most spectacular known example of this phenomenon occurs in the Denmark Strait, the body of water separating Greenland from Iceland. Here, frigid water from the Arctic Ocean, made exceptionally dense by both its low temperature and high salinity, meets the relatively warmer waters of the Atlantic. The Arctic water, being heavier, plunges beneath the Atlantic water in a massive underwater cataract that drops nearly 3,500 meters, more than 3 times the height of the world's tallest building and far exceeding any waterfall on land. The scale of this underwater waterfall is almost incomprehensible. It carries approximately 5 million cubic meters of water per second over the edge of the underwater cliff. To put this in perspective, this single submarine waterfall transports more than 3,000 times the volume of water that flows over Niagara Falls. Yet despite this enormous power, the Denmark Strait cataract flows with a strange dreamlike slowness. The water descends at such a gradual pace that a swimmer caught in its current would barely notice they were being carried downward, drifting through what would feel like ordinary seawater with no sense of the monumental force surrounding them. These underwater rivers and waterfalls play crucial roles in Earth's ocean systems that scientists are still working to fully comprehend. They drive the global thermohaline circulation, often called the ocean's conveyor belt, which regulates heat distribution across the planet and influences weather patterns on every continent. As these deep currents flow along the ocean floor, they transport nutrients from one region to another, carrying organic matter and minerals that support deep-sea ecosystems thousands of kilometers from where those nutrients originated. The cascading water also mixes different ocean layers in ways that affect everything from carbon dioxide absorption to fish migration patterns. Some researchers believe that changes in these underwater rivers could serve as early warning signs of shifting climate patterns, while others study how these flows might be altered by warming ocean temperatures. The very existence of these hidden rivers reminds us that the ocean is not a uniform body of water, but a complex, layered system with its own internal geography, weather, and dynamics that rival anything we see on land. Fact 7. Vision without light. Seeing the invisible. In the deepest caves, the darkest ocean trenches, and the blackest hours of night, some animals possess abilities that would seem like superpowers if we encountered them in humans. These creatures have evolved sophisticated methods of perceiving their surroundings that operate in conditions where human eyes would be completely useless, proving that sight encompasses far more than the detection of visible light. In the abyssal depths of the ocean where sunlight never penetrates, some fish have developed eyes that seem disproportionately large for their bodies. These enormous eyes aren't designed to see shapes and colours as we do, but rather to detect the faintest flickers of bioluminescence, the living light produced by other deep-sea creatures. Their eyes contain extraordinary numbers of rod cells, the photoreceptors responsible for detecting light in dim conditions, and lack the cone cells that perceive colour, since colour is meaningless in an environment without light. Some deep-sea fish can detect a single photon of light, the smallest possible unit of light energy, allowing them to spot the telltale glow of prey or predators from surprising distances in the otherwise total darkness. Other creatures have abandoned traditional vision entirely in favour of thermal imaging. Certain species of pit vipers, pythons, and boas possess specialised organs located in small pits on their faces that can detect infrared radiation, essentially heat signatures. These heat-sensing pits contain membranes packed with temperature-sensitive nerve endings so finely tuned that they can detect temperature differences as small as a few thousandths of a degree Celsius. This allows the snakes to see a thermal image of their surroundings, perceiving warm-blooded prey as glowing shapes against the cooler background even in complete darkness. A mouse or bird becomes visible not through reflected light but through the infrared radiation its body naturally emits, creating a heat portrait that guides the snake's strike with deadly accuracy. Many nocturnal mammals have evolved different adaptations for seeing in near darkness. Cats, owls, and numerous other night-active animals possess retinas densely packed with rod cells, far more than humans have, giving them greater sensitivity to limited light. Behind their retinas lies a reflective layer called the tapetum lucidum, a structure that acts like a mirror, bouncing light that passes through the retina back through it a second time. This gives the photoreceptors a second opportunity to capture photons they might have missed on the first pass, effectively amplifying the available light. This is why cat and owl eyes seem to glow when caught by flashlight or headlights. You're seeing light reflected back from the tapetum lucidum. Some animals go even further, using senses that seem entirely alien to human experience. Many species of bats and all species of toothed whales navigate through echolocation, emitting high-frequency sounds and constructing detailed three-dimensional maps of their surroundings from the returning echoes. While this isn't vision in the traditional sense, it provides information about object location, size, shape, texture, and even movement that parallels what sighted animals obtain through eyes. Some researchers argue that the mental representation created by echolocation is functionally equivalent to vision, just built from sound rather than light. Similarly, many fish and some amphibians possess lateral line systems, rows of specialized sensory organs along their sides that detect minute pressure changes and water movements. In murky water or total darkness, these fish can sense the presence, location, and movement of other animals from the disturbances they create in the surrounding water, essentially winning through pressure and flow rather than light. These diverse adaptations demonstrate that what we call seeing is really just one specific solution to the broader problem of perceiving one's environment. Evolution has crafted dozens of different ways for animals to navigate, hunt, and survive in darkness, each suited to particular ecological niches and challenges. The world perceived by these animals is fundamentally different from our own visual experience. Not inferior, but different, revealing aspects of reality that remain forever invisible to human senses.